The views and comments expressed on the following radio program by its hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of rmconair.com or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Into slaves by those who teach lies. They don't teach the law of cause and effect. They make the people believe when they see it rain that a spook is producing it. But the rain is real. How then can the cause be unreal? You are witnessing conditions in the world that are produced by real men, but you don't see the real cause of the effect of your own suffering. Because the bloodsuckers of the poor make you think that God is some mystery God. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that there is 5% who are the poor righteous teachers who don't believe that there is 5% who are the poor righteous teachers who don't believe that there is 5% who are the poor righteous teachers who don't believe that there is 5% who are the poor righteous teachers who don't believe that there is 5% who are the poor righteous teachers.
Peace. This is the Knowledge of Self radio show. I'm your host, Jerule Allah. I got my brothers with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Kyle.
Peace, it's Jerule Allah right here.
Peace, this is Ture Allah.
Indeed. So in this show, some of the topics we're going to be covering today, we're going to be dealing with the prison industrial complex system. We're also going to be looking at the youth and their role in that, and is going to jail kind of a rite of passage for the youth nowadays. And we're going to be looking at what are the steps that lead up to youth imprisonment, dealing with education and things like that. I'd like to have Ture out on right now.
Okay, peace. I wanted to introduce my son. His name is Kai. He's going to talk to you a little bit about what justice is. So, Kai.
So,
First of all, tell the people how old are you?
6.
Okay. And what is justice?
It's what happens when you do right or wrong.
Okay. Peace.
Peace. Good job.
All right. So we wanted to start out today's show about the prison industrial complex as it relates to what is justice by reading the 13th Amendment from the U.S. Constitution. It's titled Slavery Abolished, and it's said to have been ratified December the 6th, 1865. And it says, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." So this helps us as a springboard into the whole discussion about the prison industrial complex. So the first thing we wanted to do for all of the viewing and listening audience is define what the prison industrial complex is. So to begin with, as far as a more technical term, the prison industrial complex is a term used to attribute the rapid expansion of the U.S. inmate population to the political influence of private prison companies and businesses that supply goods and services to government prison agencies. So to make it a little bit simpler, it's basically a prison for profit industry. Kind of a tongue tie. So we wanted to build on that a little bit more in terms of how does this play out in the society that we live in. Let me just give it over to Jerule. What are your thoughts about what the prison industrial complex is and how you see it?
Well, peace. I think the major thing from what you just read that stands out to me is that they need property for profit, you know, so they're not really in the business of trying to make sure that people aren't going to prison. What actually benefits them more is people actually, coming into the facility.
Coming into the prisons, right.
Right. And the more people that are incarcerated, the more money they make. So,
Right. So the people become the property.
Exactly.
And that's how they make their profit, almost by selling the people, kind of.
Right.
That's interesting. When you look at the, the Emancipation Proclamation, one of the things that I heard talked about is how it didn't necessarily free the slaves as much as it did transfer the property of the South to the government. And so then when you kind of look at that in the prison systems, prison are now, at one point they were state owned, but now they're privately owned. That's leased out by the government. And so it's kind of like the transfer of property over to the government. Now they tie that into the prison system.
Right. I see that for sure.
Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about which companies invest in private prisons, because what most of us are unaware of is the fact that there are several companies who make a profit through their investments in prisons. So we wanted to divvy up several companies that we have here. And just as a reference, and if we'll probably say this a couple of times during the show, it's a really good idea for you to have something to write with, and you can jot down some of this information and pass it on. So essentially, we have it categorized according to what the company does. And I'm going to go ahead and just share the first two. So this is basically a list of the companies that are said to have invested in private prison industry. The first one are the banks. So some of you may be familiar with the American Express Company, Bank of America, Fidelity Investments, and J.P. Morgan and Company. So that means that if you're banking at Bank of America, for example, at some point the dollars that you contribute to that bank are being used to invest in private prisons. They also have energy producers and oil companies that are also investing in private prison industry, beginning with Amco Corporation, Arco. I know several of us use Arco for gas stations. Chevron, ExxonMobil Corporation, and Mobil Oil Corporation. I want to go ahead and let Jaquil go ahead and read the next couple of categories and companies.
Sure. So there's some energy producers that you guys may be familiar with. We have the Commonwealth Edison Company, Edison Electronic, and Koch Industries. Who are, those people definitely send their money to add on to the incarceration, of original people, black and brown. There's some insurance companies, major players like Allstate, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Liberty, the Lizard, Geico, that slimy fellow. State Farm, they got those catchy commercials, bum, ba-dum-dum-dum. They got you kind of dumb-to-dummed.
True indeed.
Yeah. If you want to throw a couple more in there. I guess maybe before that, you mentioned Bank of America.
Right.
I know at one point Bank of America had got, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, they were the ones who were responsible for everyone's social service and, social services checks that you were getting in and unemployment checks. And so they were getting a big cut off of that, issuing out those checks and whatnot to the people.
Wow. Go ahead, Jerule. Go ahead and hit them with the pharmaceuticals and the manufacturing companies.
Okay, so in pharmaceuticals, we got Abbott Laboratories, Bayer Corporation, and Pfizer Incorporated. I think most of us probably are most familiar with Bayer.
Right, the aspirin.
Aspirin, right. In manufacturing, we got AutoZone Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Fruit of the Loom. That's another crazy one there. Grocery Manufacturers of America. We got Motorola, Procter & Gamble, Sara Lee Corporation, to name a few.
Okay. Right. Procter & Gamble, they make almost everything in your medicine cabinet, huh?
And then in terms of telecommunications, we have AT&T, for example, Sprint, and Verizon Communications. Those would just be a couple of telecommunication companies. And into transportation, we have United Parcel Service and United Airlines, as well as the Boeing Company, which are also companies that invest in private prisons. And then there are a list of several other companies, to name a few: Sears, Roebuck and Company, Mary Kay Cosmetics, and Walmart. So the reason why we're sharing this with you is so that you're aware. Now you can say that you're aware of these things, and since you're aware, you now have to make the decision about what you're going to do with this information, because that's a question I always ask myself. So what? What are you going to do with this information, and how are you going to pass it on and make a difference? I wanted to go ahead and pass it back over to Jaquil in terms of exactly how much money the private prisons make.
Okay, word. Yeah, so as far as I understand it, they make upwards to 37 billion, and that's kind of on the low end, like an average. So, people are making at least that, if not more, off the prison industry. One thing I'd like to know is, do you guys have any information on in which ways or how are these people contributing to the prison? As far as we mentioned, Walmart, Sears, Motorola, Sprint, AT&T, how are these companies donating their money to the prisons? How does that affect the prisons?
Well, I know a lot of prisons, they're into manufacturing different goods. So they have the inmates actually putting together a lot of different products and things of that nature. So, obviously the prisoners aren't getting paid top dollar for these things, so it's really cheap labor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, that's definitely one way.
Right. And I think one of the things is if by chance, those of you who may have loved ones or someone that's in prison, one good thing to ask them is what type of clothing is being issued in the facility that they were held in. So you can see which companies are investing, because underwear, cereal, things of that nature. Why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about how this relates to the prison statistics? First thing, I think everyone needs to be aware that the approximate population in the United States is 293 million, and there are approximately 2.2 million people in prison, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. So this is equal to the size of city of Houston. Now, another thing that we wanted to share with you is that there are about 4,575 prisons in the United States, and that's an astounding number of prisons to be in an industrialized country.
That is. What's the number of schools in America?
I wonder really sure about that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's just an interesting thing to think about there.
Right.
The number of schools versus prisons, huh?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you look at it, though, is like they continuously take money away from the education and schooling systems, but you see that they're building prisons day in and day out. So, I mean, like, it kind of shows that there's, a little something sneaky going on there, you know what I mean?
True indeed, true indeed. Did you want to add on, Ture?
Aside from the fact that that's a large number, but in terms of the world, we imprison we're making about 25% of the number of people that are in prison in the world. So that's wow. Basically how it pans out in terms of the world percentage.
Wow.
Before we go to break, I'll just let Jaquil announce the next segment we'll be going into.
Indeed. So the next segment we'll be talking about is education and prevention, and how that ties into the prison system, how that ties into the enrollment or the incarceration of youth and males in the prison system. Peace. Welcome back. It's Knowledge Self Show. I'm your host, Jerule Allah. I got the guys with me.
Jerule Allah.
Peace. Ture Allah.
Indeed, indeed. So in this segment, we'll be building about the education and prevention, and how that ties into the justice system. Before that, I'd like to kind of take a step back. You know, today being the 10th, for those who are in the know, that's the Knowledge Cipher Day, all being born back to knowledge. In the Bible, there was an interesting verse that I read in Hosea 4:6, where it talks about my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And in this portion, since we're dealing with education and prevention, I think that's a great verse to kind of read and how it ties into that. You guys want to add on how you see that verse? And
Well, you know, it's pretty clean and cut. You know, if you don't know, you're going to destroy yourself. So it's
Right.
just really about being aware of certain situations, because if you look at the topic that we're dealing with, these people are being incarcerated at alarming rates for a lack of knowledge. They don't understand, or they don't know and understand that as soon as you get caught up in that system, you become property. And then,
Right.
you know, from that situation, they get rich off you. So,
right,
you know, I think it's important that, you know, we strive to really be aware of everything that we do, everything we get involved in.
right. And once you get in, it's kind of hard to get back out of that. Huh?
True indeed. And also it goes back into what I read originally from the Constitution, that you become enslaved. You know, you give up your constitutional rights and you become enslaved, free labor, cheap labor for some of the companies that we read.
Right, right, exactly. You become used as a tool and a slave, huh?
Right, true indeed.
That's interesting. I know, Jerule, you wanted to build about the statistics of incarceration.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my beautiful black woman. She's the one who actually got this information for me, so I'm thankful for that.
Yes.
Basically, it's just statistics of incarcerated African American males. You know, prior to like 1982, around that time, there was actually a decline in the incarceration rate. And that's like around the time that Reagan came in with his war on drugs and that whole thing. And by 1985, you know, that's when they started like the whole crack cocaine and that whole era. And then within a 10-year span, you know, the population of prisoners jumped. Actually, pardon me, within a 30-year span, the population of prisoners jumped from 300,000 to 2 million. So
Wow. So was it really a war on crack, or was it a war on blacks?
Yeah, definitely a war on people of color, blacks in particular, especially in South Central. So those of us who lived in Los Angeles in the late 80s, mid 80s, you could see a shift in what was happening in the communities around this time. And then, of course, it came out later what was going on in South Central in terms of crack cocaine, and the drug wars and the war in Central America. So it's just I can remember that jail was very prominent in terms of what was happening to our young men between 18 and 25. Like many of them were getting incarcerated, getting caught up in that period of time, the drug trade.
Right. That's interesting. I wonder how did that happen? In effect, you know, were they able to split up the family? Because prior to that, right, there was a strong black family, right? You had mother, father, and baby, right? Man, woman, and child together. It's a strong nucleus. Around that time, you know, definitely as males start getting incarcerated, you're losing your fathers, right? You're losing your bigger brothers, your uncles, all those kind of male prominent figures in your family are being locked up now. So, you know, you're coming up as a young man, you know, without that influence of someone to teach you how to be a father or how to be a man.
right, and more than likely, where you're gonna go to the streets.
Right.
You're gonna go to the streets, and then you're gonna get caught up in the same things your father might have got caught up in, and then the cycle continues. So.
And it goes back to the verse in Hosea, is that my people die or destroyed because of lack of knowledge. So what we're trying to give our listeners or our viewers is just some information that you're generally not going to see well published and very public, you know. So I wanted to go ahead and transition into how imprisonment and the fact that many of our children are getting a poor, inadequate education, how that leads to imprisonment. So I have something that was printed by the Children Defense Fund in 2010. And essentially it reveals that more than 60% of all students in 4th, 8th, and 12th grades in public schools are unable to read or do math at grade level. So taking it to today, just within the last couple of years, we see that, so-called African American students and so-called Latino students are making up about 50% of those who are dropping out of high school. So what that means is much of the road that's paved for our children to wind up in prison, it begins in formal schooling. Okay.
Interesting.
I wasn't able to bring the information because it's supposedly an urban myth, but it's been said that they're predicting the number of people that will be imprisoned based on elementary school reading scores. So I think when we return to part 2 of this show, we'll be able to share that with you and get you some solid resources to share.
Right. I heard as early as 3rd grade reading levels.
Right.
They're building prisons based on that. If that's the rumor that we're building on, if that's what it is, that's pretty serious. Right. Especially in this day and age. I think when we grew up and we had toys, it was a lot different. A lot of us didn't grow up with video games, so that was kind of an addition to our childhood. Prior to that, we were playing board games. Mm-hmm. We had to build most of our
model
toys.
Cars,
right.
Model planes.
Right. Things didn't just come assembled to play with.
Right.
So why don't we go ahead and I just wanted to share the fact that we were building on what parenting has to do with the fact that there are so many young people winding up in prison. So how does parenting tie into not only dropping out but then imprisonment?
Well, I think it's very important that people recognize that when you have a child, you guys have to be the main source as a teacher for that child. Mm-hmm. You can't expect anybody else to do a better job than you two. So first and foremost, you need to keep that unit together. Right. Obviously, based on the statistics, it's difficult for the black man to be in the household based on him being incarcerated at alarming rates, but I think it's important that the family stays together, you guys stay on the same page, and you teach your child who he really is so that he develops confidence in himself. I think a lot of times when you go to school, especially in the schooling that we get, we're really only being taught about European and Caucasian history and things of that nature. And the only history that deals with us is kind of a negative perspective. So obviously that has an effect on one's confidence. I can speak to me specifically when I was coming through school, a lot of the information that was shared was really just dealing with slavery. And that's all I really knew about my people. And, I didn't really get that fundamental basis at home that I would have liked to, and that kind of developed into, I guess almost like a self-hatred, so.
Interesting, right. So from the get-go, they kind of teach you.
It's miseducation, like this book, The Miseducation of the Negro, another great book to check out.
Interesting, okay.
And one of the things I wanted to add on in terms of what you were saying about self-esteem, I remember my father passing me some books down written by Jawanza Kunjufu, and it had a lot to do with building self-esteem in black children. I don't quite remember the title, but for the most part, self-esteem plays a big part in the types of decisions our young people make. And also that kind of helps with the self-confidence, and it's less likely that peer pressure is going to factor into them making certain mistakes, which may lead to, committing criminal acts.
Right.
Jerule, what would be another sort of really good tip in terms of educating our children to help them prepare, as far as being healthy individuals, but more or less to prepare to go through what we consider a sort of a beast society, which is intent on imprisoning people and making money off of people they imprison?
Well, like we said earlier, it's that at first and foremost having that self-confidence. You have to develop that self-confidence. With me, if it wasn't for sport, I was very involved in football. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably, who knows where I'd be. I'd probably be one of these statistics. So I think getting your child enrolled in activities early on, taking them to see different types of environments, not the same neighborhood all the time. I think that's important.
Right, exposure to things they may not have normally come in contact with,
Right.
Different cultures,
Right.
different kind of music.
Right.
Indeed, true indeed. We're about to take a break, so I say when we come back, we'll definitely close up in this section. We'll have a couple phone calls maybe coming in that we can take. So we'll catch you guys after the break. Peace.
Peace. Where are we at? Right here?
He's on.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge to Self show. I'm Jerule Allah.
Jerule Allah.
Ture Allah. Peace.
Indeed, peace. And so we have a caller. We got Life of Law on the radio, on the telephone. Peace, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Peace. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, peace. Peace.
You have to turn your radio off.
Oh, okay, let me turn my radio off.
Yeah, you're getting some feedback.
Okay, let me turn my radio off. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Peace.
All right, peace. Peace to the Knowledge of Self radio listeners, to those watching this via live. I just want to add on to what we was talking about as far as the justice system. But before I go there, we'll talk about the knowledge add-on a cipher, which borns back to knowledge. Mm-hmm. Knowledge, we know, is the foundation to all things, and is the basis of things that could occur once you apply it. And to add on to that cipher is to understand your environment and understand where you come from, who you're dealing with, people, places, and things. At the same time, we draw this up to be justice, which is appealing to a reward according to a way in action. Your ways and your actions, your thought patterns, the things that you're thinking about will go ahead and give you a sense of your own reality. So pretty much we are all designed to create our own fate or destiny. That's number one. Number two, based upon the lessons that we've discovered through the knowledge of ourselves, we know that there's no mystery to anything. The only mystery is what we haven't found out yet. And because of that, it entitles us to all the listeners, all the watchers, to go out there and find out what you need to know. That's why this radio show, and as it relates to non-self, is very crucial and critical. Now, in reference to the juvenile justice system and the prison industrial complex and why all these things are taking place, it's important for us to recognize, too, is that all of us have a part to play when it comes to our youth. Some of us are a little timid when it comes to going out there in the communities to share this knowledge because of the fear factor. In our lessons, it talk about certain things that we need to keep in mind. And one of them is out of the English C lesson, which talks about what? The devil teaching them to eat the wrong foods. The wrong foods meaning the wrong school of thought, which is the educational systems. These different things. It's up to us now to share the right foods, which is what we're doing today. So as it relates to the system, you know, it is a system. And anytime you get caught up in the system, it is hard to reach. I heard the God, Jerule, mention that in terms of being incarcerated and being slaves, that we're property. Well, it's deeper than that. As I said last show, we all have to understand the birth certificate. What that birth certificate really is, it is a bond given for foreign debt to the banks and all those that you brothers talked about. And so we're already, when you're born into a system of slavery, but it's a psychological, economical one. Mm-hmm. Now, because there is no jobs and because of the wrong foods that they teach us in the educational systems, we go out and we do crimes in order to maintain some type of stability, and then now we become a part of a different system which keeps us, incarcerated. So it is real critical, man, that we begin to formulate our own schools in the streets, in the communities, in order for us to reach the youth. I mean, this is just one platform on radio. I know the Gods and Earths have our other platform in Lamert Park, and I know that there's other Gods and Earths as well as those civilized people out there in the various areas throughout the world that is adding on. So here's my question to the panel and to the host.
Okay.
Each and one of you have a responsibility as fathers, as role models, as teachers, as civilized men. What are we going to do today that's going to make the difference for our babies tomorrow? Because the world we live in is a very uncertain one now. And it is so uncertain that there are things that are certain, which is why the God talked about the statistics and what they can able to detect at a certain level now. What are we going to do to prepare a way for our children based on the mental, the physical, the social, the economical, and the right energy that we need to now put it forth a certain type of effort? What are we going to do? And that's my question to anyone on the panel.
Well,
thank you.
Peace, life. I think to begin with is just as far as how we teach our own children within our household, we have to really reach out to those children who are quote unquote not our children, because the way we approach this life, especially knowing what we know that we can no longer say, well, that's not my child. These are all our children, and what they do affects us either directly or indirectly. So to add on to that, we have to begin by creating a forum, an active, visible forum, tutoring, which should be free. All right, in some of the areas of Los Angeles where there is a high percentage of our students who cannot read or do any other fundamentals by the time they're in elementary school. Right. And I would also encourage all parents, and this can just be in passing, but always set the example, is that you need to begin teaching your child how to read and do basic math, counting, word recognition before you send them to school. Because one of the errors that I think our people are making is we are sending our children to school and expecting teachers, people that we really don't know, to educate our children with the fundamentals. You want to add on, Jerule?
I mean, you pretty much covered all the bases, but like I said, to me, it just really has to do with self-confidence. Like, you as parents have to make sure that your children are confident when they step outside of the house to know who they are. Mm-hmm. If they don't, then the world's going to teach them who they are, and then by then they're probably already lost. So,
right, indeed. I think that's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. Like this book, The Miseducation of a Negro. In school, they teach you kind of that your history starts with slavery, and so you don't really get the greatness and the richness of your culture, right? And so that kind of plays a psychological effect on you, and then, with the lack of education, like that verse talked about, my people are destroyed for a lack of education, right? So the school systems don't necessarily give you what you need to make it. Definitely don't teach you about yourself, right? And then the things that they do teach you don't hold your interest. So then you go out to make money the only way that you see other people making money in those environments. And as we know, that's not the best way to get that money.
Right, and that leads us into our discussion about dropouts, because according to the American Youth Policy Forum 2004, 70% of the children that were surveyed that dropped out of school said that they were not motivated or inspired. So all of that goes back to, Jerule, your comment about self-confidence and self-esteem and how we draw those things up. If we don't have any type of image in the information that we're reading, an image of ourselves in the image in the information that we're reading, it's highly unlikely that we're going to be able to relate. So, for example, if we were to tell you that, the algebra was actually a person, he was an original man. That's who that particular type of math is named after. When I ask students that I see on a regular basis, because I'm a high school teacher, most of them look at me and say, what? So that's not something that's a part of the curriculum. It's something that could be taught in all of the curriculum, because our contributions are very significant across the board.
Vast. True
so
indeed.
I think that's one way that would sort of change the outcome of what's going on in schools: the right information and the right education.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I agree. I think we have a caller. Peace, caller, you there?
Yes, this is Mecca.
Oh, peace, Earth.
Mecca.
How are you?
Peace, Earth.
Peace to the gods. This is the Earth Mecca Islam. I just wanted to add on in regards to, the prison system and how to really inform the youth of not getting caught up in it and realizing that it's such a huge system that they get involved in, and it happens systematically based on the conditions that they're in, but especially explaining to the youth why they get caught up in it. This civilization is based on prestige, and the media, TV, radio, everything that they see is based on obtaining that prestige. Cars, labels, clothing, shoes, all these different things. And original people are so creative. If they are disenfranchised economically, educationally, socially, they're still going to strive to obtain that prestige by any means necessary. So they're going to get creative with it. Hence, you have youngsters, selling drugs, selling whatever. So you have to show them a different method, how to be able to make money and obtain that prestige without doing something that's outside of them. And explaining to them what happens a lot of times when they get caught up in the system. Once they have a jacket or a record on them as a youth, it is extremely hard for them to get out of it. Extremely hard. Once they have a jacket, once they turn 18, that probation gets extended. Every little thing is stacked up against them. It's harder to get a job once they have a record. It's harder to get even scholarships now.
Right.
There's so many different things, even getting an apartment. There's so many different things that are stacked up against you once you have a record, and that makes it even harder to get out of that system.
Indeed. Peace. So let me ask you this: so what's one thing you think we can do to cause an effect in that area?
I recently worked on a program with women who were transitioning out of prison, and I think the biggest thing that you can do is just educate. And I mean, it starts at so many different levels. You have to educate the youth. You have to be able to make yourself available. Of course, it's through tutoring and all these different things, but you have to make yourself presentable in a way that you can relate to them. So many of us have so many different ideas on what can be done for the youth and what can be done for the people, but you have to be able to relate to them and come from a place of understanding where you understand where they're coming from. When I worked with the women who were transitioning out of prison, I was able to work with them because I'm able to relate to them. I know what it's like to be on the streets. I know what it's like to be out there. I know what it's like to be in the soup line. I know what it's like to not have anything. And I was raised like that. So what I did was, in my program, I worked with them. I'm working to heal because I came to them from a perspective of what their children go through. This is what I went through because my parents were in and out of prison. So you have to be very relatable to the people.
Right.
No one's going to want to learn from you if you can't even relate to them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
True indeed. So you were the one who knowledge decipher and then put what needed to be in there, huh?
Right. I mean,
Indeed.
everything that I speak on or everything that I teach, it's because I've already experienced that. And when I worked with the women who were coming in out of prison, it's very hard for them because they already know their experience. They already know what it's like to be locked up. I've already gone through so much humiliation. It's hard for them to come back on the streets and transition because A, they lack education. B, they lack support. C, they've already disappointed their entire families, and it's really hard. It's hard for them to start. But relating to them, coming from a child's perspective, like I had all of them write letters to their children, and to understand what it's like to go through that. So you have to be able to relate to the people through your own experience. And if you don't have that experience, you have to bring people to them who do have that experience.
Right. And I think that's one of the most challenging things is to basically reach children who are, several years younger than we are. I think one of the things that I did last week in my classroom that really touched my students was I had one of our former students come in, and she talked a little bit about her life and growing up in a family where, both of her parents were gang members or active gang members. But in addition to that, it was interesting to see how so many of the students in my class were affected by the fact that she was sharing her story. So it's definitely a survival story. She's in college now, but we do have to bring those type of resources in to just show children that, yes, I made it through and I'm here, I'm alive to tell you the story. However, if I had done things differently, which that student did, she showed them, if she had done things differently, her life would have had a different turnout. So bringing the right people in that could relate to our children is one key factor, one key thing that we need.
Indeed. And Mecca, I'm glad you were able to build on the women incarceration. Mm-hmm. From my research, from what I understand, that's increased greatly over the last couple of years to where now more women are being subjugated to being imprisoned at higher rates, almost becoming equal to male black imprisonment rates.
It's serious because, the effects of parents being locked up, it's twofold. So many original people, their households are raised as single parents, especially the mothers. But when you have mothers that are locked up, it affects the children so much so. I know the one thing, going through that and watching my parents be in and out of prison, the one thing, my mother was always very truthful with us, and she always, we knew everything. We knew when she was strung out. We knew when she was on the streets. We knew when she was going to have to face more time. And she was always very truthful with us, and she was always vocal about being truthful and taking that experience. That's something that I'm able to add on with my children because my boys are totally different. We live right in South Central. They're able to walk around. They know, they have peers that they were little with, and they are gangbangers. And they're able to interact with everybody because they just know that's not our get down. And it's because of the fact that I build with them constantly, not only on my experience, but the overall plight of original people. And that's key. You know what I'm saying? Building with them and explaining to them what happens. If you make one wrong choice, you get yourself in trouble. This is what will happen. My boys are, like I said, we live right in South Central, right, by the quote-unquote jungles. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and these two young brothers have never been in a physical altercation. They know how to interact with people. They know how to speak to them and be like, yo, that's not me. Right. And they are very, very respectable young men, but a lot of it has to do with building with them. You have to build with them. Sometimes you have to get raw with them. Sometimes you have to show them.
Right, true indeed. And that's like the verse talks about, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So we appreciate you, for doing what you do and giving that knowledge to your babies and also spreading that to the other people you interact with. So right now we're about to get into a break. First I want to say peace out to Ture Allah. He definitely takes care of us on Facebook and GPS Solutions. Catch you after the break. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self show. I'm the host, Jerule Allah.
Jerule Allah.
Ture Allah. Peace.
Indeed. So, just kind of to recap, we were going over the education or miseducation of people in prison, of our young males and young women actually in prison, as women rates are increasing drastically over the last couple of years here in prison. You guys want to add on anything before we go to our next caller?
I wanted to mention that one of the things that is probably not passed around too often is how many juveniles are in prison, because we're talking about prison, and I wanted to make sure people understood that the statistics that we're sharing about prisons is not jail. We're talking about prisons, people who have been sentenced. So there are even more, a larger number of people
who are in jail.
In a jail,
Okay.
yes. So let's make sure we understand those statistics. But from just within the last 10 years, it's said that juvenile incarceration has grown from anywhere between 90,000 and 105,000 in the United States, and 85% of those are male.
Wow.
So it's an astounding number. We have a lot of work to do in terms of reaching our children and telling them that prison is not a rites of passage. It's just a snare.
Right. Doesn't make you cool. Doesn't make you tough. Nothing like that. Indeed. You wanted to add on, God, or?
Nah, I mean, he pretty much, like I said, he covered it. So.
Indeed. Let's go to our caller. Peace, caller. You on the line?
Peace.
Oh, peace, Infinite. How you got?
I'm doing good, God. Yourself?
Indeed, I'm well.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace, Infinite.
Peace, Ray. Peace to the gods.
Peace, Allah. Peace.
So, Infinite, for people who don't know you, why don't you go ahead and give them a quick introduction of yourself, God?
Okay. My name is Infinite God Allah. I want to thank the gods for letting me add my knowledge onto the cipher first and foremost.
Indeed.
I got first-hand knowledge of the gang culture and also the jail system, and pretty much, a constant student of knowledge itself in general. So I'll leave it with that right there.
Okay, for sure. So let's just get into it. How do you? Let me ask you this question. What was it like? Or let me go back a step. At what age did you get incarcerated, and what was that like for you personally? And then also, how did that affect your family? Because I think one thing that's not talked about enough is the effect that it has not only on the young man or woman going into the prison, right, but the effect that it has on the family who's left behind on the outside. So if you want to add on to that.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I went to jail like 2 or 3 times, like 3 times, and one of the times was I was a juvenile. I went from 17 until I was 22, and that at that particular time, as being a juvenile, it was really like hardships put on my parents and my family. But just being taken away from the hurt of like not having your son there, so to pull that dynamic away, and then it changed the whole structure of my household, because now my parents are putting all their finances into getting me a lawyer, taking care of me, sending me packages and taking care of me on that type of note.
Right.
And unfortunately, I had an experience as an adult being taken away from my family structure. As an adult, being the breadwinner, so to speak, being the father and being taken away from there. In that instance, is like basically a total breakdown of the family structure.
Right.
Because now your breadwinner was gone. Now the father was gone. Now the male figure was gone.
Right. The piece that kind of held everything together, huh? The one with the magnetic.
Exactly. I mean, now you're in a universe with no sun. There's nobody to shine the light. There's no knowledge there.
Right, and it gets cold, huh?
Exactly.
Cold place without sun. Indeed. You guys want to add on? Have any questions?
It's Jerule right here. I just wanted to ask, what was it that allowed you to prevent yourself from going back in after that third and last time?
In one word, I would say the responsibility.
Mm.
You know, once you really step into the shoes of being an adult and understand the responsibilities and understand the effects that you have on people that depend on you, you know, whether it's your wife, you know, your mother or your kids that depend on you. And once you take that responsibility and understand the severity that it plays when you're not there, I mean, something should click in your brain and be like, well, if I'm not there, then I'm not adding on. I'm not being useful because now all the resources that I should be bringing to the table, somebody is breaking their neck trying to give it to me while I'm up in them stoops.
Right. And from what I understand, it's expensive to do things in prison, in jail. Chips cost like $4 and, you know, things of that. So not only are they making money from you being in prison, but they're making money from you having to buy different kind of things like snacks and whatever in prison to try and make life easier for you.
What I wanted to ask Infinite, this is Ture. I wanted to ask you, what are the steps that lead to youth imprisonment? I mean, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you've observed, you know, the youth in 2013. What are some of the things that parents may be overlooking, which leads to youth, you know, getting involved in crime and things related to that?
I would say the peer pressure is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hear about it that much. Maybe it's just different pieces of peer pressure that's focused on, you know, bullying. You know, you got bullying and wanting to be part of the in crowd. Those little pieces fall up under the umbrella of peer pressure as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also it's the lack of knowledge of self. And the lack of knowledge of self highlights the parenting at home or the lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Right. True
Right,
indeed.
you know, because if you don't even know who you are, and then you're trying to be other than yourself because you're not being who you are by nature.
Right.
Why, you know, take it on another level, you know, and if your parents aren't giving you that, then shit, you don't even know where to begin at then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you just on the fly trying to figure out what it's going to be, and then what it's going to be is what media feeds you. Basically put you in some type of hypnosis that you aren't even aware of.
Right.
True indeed. I think that's an important thing that you touched on right there is the media aspect of it. So not so much what we're being fed in school, but also what we're being shown on television, you know, be it portrayed in rap videos, movies. Mm-hmm. You know, I saw the 21 Jump Street, which I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I grew up watching 21 Jump Street. And then, so, I reluctantly watched the movie, but there were a lot of different images if you're a young black male in that movie that you would see, and it would kind of give you a weird aspect or image of self.
Right.
And so Infant, let me ask you this question: what message would you give to the youth? As far as speaking both to the ones who have not yet gone into prison and maybe to the ones who are in prison coming out.
Well, the ones that haven't made it here yet, I'll tell them it's not what you think it is. You know, it's not it's not glorified. You know, nothing is glorified about sitting in your room 23 hours out a day, you know, for weeks at a time and going out, you know, an hour every other day by yourself.
Wow, by yourself,
so
right.
So you can look at TV and, you know, it's exactly that. You know, it's TV. So they fast forward in all the downtime. You know, you don't see yourself just sitting up in a cell for endless hours. Just doing nothing, with no verbals or nothing. And I just seen people in there crack up by not having no contact. People can't take that, and you don't even know you can't take it until you put in that situation.
Definitely the psychological aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the piece, a small piece of what I would tell the people that haven't been. And then the ones that's coming out, I would say that it's a mental game. And doing the same things that got you there, hanging around the same people that got you there, and the people that's talking the same thing, logically, you already know you shouldn't even be doing that. You know it already, though. If you know it's wrong, it's wrong. So you got to break that habit. You got to break the habit. You got to break the culture. You got to break the mindset. And it only begins with you. It ain't about changing the people around you. First, you got to change yourself.
That's
and
right.
be put in that lane.
Right,
So
true
when you
indeed.
come out, if you go right back to the same things you was doing, then it won't be no mystery why you back in there.
Right. I believe it was Gandhi who said you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. With that, God, go ahead and give the people your contact information. How can they get a hold of you? I understand you got a blog. You be dropping a lot of jewels on people. Go ahead and give that out.
Oh, yes, sir. That's my blog spot is wordsofinfinite.blogspot.com.
Okay. Words are infinite.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Wordsofinfinite.blogspot.com. And this was some general building. I mean, you can reach out at me at my email, infinitegod1@yahoo.com.
Okay. Okay, indeed. I also hear you be at Lamont Park on the last Sunday of every month.
Oh, yes, sir. At the rallies out in Love Allah.
Indeed.
Every last Sunday of the month. We out there building at 2 p.m. on until.
Indeed.
So people can come out there and reach me, reach us, come get the knowledge of stuff firsthand.
Indeed, that's what it is. All right, God, we appreciate you calling in and adding on and giving us your wisdom.
Peace, Infinite.
Peace to the gods, and
Peace to the God.
truly
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Some jewels.
Indeed,
Peace.
appreciate you, God. Peace.
Peace. to the
Peace.
Peace. So, that was a great show, fellas. You guys got anything else to add on for the people before we get out of here?
Just want to say study and keep the children strong.
I just want to say peace to my family, and keep your heads up, whoever is locked down, and keep striving to be better. And we'll see you on the next show.
Indeed. And with that, we'll say peace. Catch you guys on the next show.